Really, she's gonna be so bad. I change. Oh, yeah.
7 o'clock.
Thank you. All right, I'll call the meeting to order. And the first order of business is to organize the board. Take nominations for chair.
I nominate Dimitri for chair.
I second.
Not so fast.
Dimitri, accept.
Dimitri accepts.
We'll bring you back from space in about 8 months.
Is there any other nominations?
I make a motion to nominate Brad as vice chair.
Right, we're skipping ahead.
You gotta vote on me first,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Any other nominations for chair?
Oh, no.
Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Now it's your.
I abstain. I won't vote.
I guess that, yeah, opposed. Abstain.
All right,
Now it's.
nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Shirley.
I'll second that.
Okay, any other nominations?
I make a motion to nominate Brad. Second.
How does that work? Never had that before.
Let's see if there's any more.
Any more?
Second.
David.
Actually, we
David.
probably should be the first one, technically, if we're following along Robert's rules. You have a motion on the floor.
Okay, yeah, you have to vote on it.
It's good that you guys know there's a second one.
Right,
Discussion and.
so can we ask the question first if both people would accept?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
Shirley, did you accept? I'm sure Brad would accept.
If Shirley doesn't want to do it, I'd be happy to do it. Otherwise, I'm very content with it.
All right,
Now we can go.
so all in favor, Shirley?
Aye.
All right, so
Opposed?
opposed?
Brad as well.
No, we're voting on Shirley.
Shirley.
Voting on Shirley first.
There's a motion on the floor.
Okay,
It carries. Doesn't matter.
Abstaining. Okay, motion carried.
all right, next order, public hearing meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion that we.
I'm relatively new here,
Huh?
and I don't know everybody.
Could we possibly go around the room and
Yep.
introduce ourselves?
I have no problem with that.
I'm John Klug. I am the vice chair of the Enfield Select Board and representative to this committee.
Dimitri Destrano. I live on George Hill Road. This is my fourth year on the committee. Second year as chair.
Dave Plumley, I live on Shaker Boulevard.
Shirley Reed.
Lisa Linoff now, Assistant Town Manager and Support Leader.
Ed Morris, Town Manager. June Pickett, live right around the corner on Ivy Road.
Nancy Smith and over at Shaker Hill.
Okay.
Maple Street.
Brad Rich, Holly Drive.
You know me.
I'm Dan Regan, for those of you I haven't met before, it's a pleasure to meet you. Look forward to working with you.
Where do you live?
Lockhaven.
Okay. Thank you.
I didn't say where I lived.
That's secret.
Klug Road.
I'll make a motion to accept the February 7th, 2024 minutes.
Well, any discussion on the minutes? Does anyone have any changes?
The second
You
first.
first, second, and then.
I second.
Okay, sorry. I'm rusty.
Doing this one.
So, any discussion on the minutes? Okay,
You have a second?
I know I have a second.
Do you?
Yeah.
Keep
Okay,
it.
okay.
So all those in favor of accepting the minutes as written? Aye. Abstain? It doesn't actually matter because the board accepts them.
You can abstain. You can abstain. You can abstain.
Okay, schedule. I suggest we meet on Thursdays like we did last year. Hope that works for people.
And Lisa wants to throw out 6:30, not 7. That was my mistake.
I don't have a strong preference on the time. If it works better for people to meet early or late. that
Is this
doesn't matter.
typically every other week, twice a month?
That's
Yeah.
what we've done. yes.
Right. And so first meeting would be, and I think we should align them with CIP. Because then that makes it easy for people to work. So the first one would be the 12th of September. Well, the second one, I guess, because this is the first meeting. And then the 26th.
So
I think keep going.
second and fourth.
Yeah, are we doing the second and fourth Thursday, or are we doing on Thursdays every 2 weeks?
So the first Thursday conservation meets here, so the second and fourth works better because
Yeah.
cemetery meets the second, or we can move them someplace. This is
Second and fourth is easier to keep track of.
I'm
Yes.
no objection of second and fourth. Is that work for people? Yes. Okay,
Are we doing 6:30 or 7, Dimitri?
what is the preference?
Sundays.
I prefer 6:30 just because it's easier in terms of my scheduling, but it's not a big deal.
I have no problem 6:30 because meetings sometimes go long and I don't like being here at
Yep.
9 PM.
Yeah, I like 6:30.
Okay. All right. 2024 budget update.
Okay, this is just gonna be a real high overview, tell you some of the issues. The issue that I've been dealing with and just some of the stuff going on. I initially had an idea of doing like a full-fledged budget update, but if some of you didn't hear, the select board asked to do a joint meeting at your next meeting.
Okay,
And I thought it'd be a lot more prudent to do a deep dive budget review that day and have everybody hear that and then talk about budget priorities and those types of things. So I just wanted to kind of high level overview some things. If you don't watch the select board meetings or keep up with minutes, right after town meeting, it seems like, we had a meeting with bond council. In 2023, Mascoma Bank contacted us when our payment was due for the public safety building. And said that we hadn't drawn any money, so we didn't need to make a payment. Right after town meeting, we had a meeting with Mascoma Bank and the bond council, because we really still hadn't drawn any money, because we hadn't broke ground yet. And bond council, I don't want to say freaked out, but pretty much said you had to have made a payment in 2023. Luckily, we encumbered $200,000 to make the payment, but it's a $400,000 or almost $400,000 payment, $370,000. So after a little bit of talk of different options we could do, we decided to go ahead and make a double payment this last year. Which
essentially covered last year and this year.
$200,000 in the hole, $170,000 in the hole from the last year. Without that, we would have had to rewrite the whole bank note and pay legal fees again, a whole bunch of different stuff, so. We did that. We started managing the budget the best we can. The one thing that I did do, I contemplated putting the stop on a bunch of projects. I decided not to do that. I wanted to go forward with the paving projects and different things that we had planned. We did that. I did put a stop in the summer on travel and training unless it was absolutely necessary, those types of things. It's small money, but it was money. I asked DPW, some of them to, instead of ordering coming into winter, gobs and gobs of salt and sand, let's order what we need to get through the year. Looking at those budget items, we delayed some hires in the police department, some of those things. We did bring on a full-time staff person when they came along, but the police assistant, those types of things, they had somebody late spring that they could have started. We worked with them and they started in the fall. Instead, they started actually August, but, so we did a few of those things, trying to help manage some money out. It looked like we're gonna make it. We've been going through it. One of the items, and you'll see it as you guys get your expense reports, is Healthcare is gonna come in a little bit under, well, a lot under, $100,000 under. That's not because we over budgeted, anything like that. Personnel changes affect that very quickly. Not bringing a police officer on till June was a pretty big chunk of money. We did budget 2 or 3 positions at a 2-person. That's what we do. If we have a blank spot, we budget 2-person. So we're not going family, we're not going single person. We're kind of in the middle there. And 2 of them we hired, took the single person option, which loosened up some money. So, continue to watch that. I'm continuing to work with my department heads, but it's just one of the things we've had to deal with this year. And so we've been managing. So as we go through, I will highlight some things as we talk about this year's budget that, you know, there may be a line, travel line or professional development, that's something. 100%, we didn't spend anything. It's because we put the brakes on. And
Question? Yeah, awesome. So is the main reason that you got the impression from Mascoma you didn't have to pay because you didn't draw any money, but the bond rules simply say when you have the bond, you start paying.
yeah, and
when you draw.
Mascoma didn't know that either. So when the bond attorney said that, Mascoma was like, but they didn't draw. And it was like, okay, well, we could have drawn enough to make a payment, but we didn't really know that was supposed to happen. And Mascoma, we asked like 3 times and they're like, no, you don't have a payment to.
Okay.
Like, okay, and then,
So Ed, I'm a little confused. We didn't anticipate a payment being necessary until we broke ground.
we budgeted a payment in 2023. And when we contacted Mascoma to say, hey, we have a payment due in June, they're like, no, you didn't draw any money, you don't have a payment due. And because the bond payments work a little different, they don't just hand us $7.2 million and say, go, it's like a construction loan.
Yeah.
As you're paying, you can draw money and
So didn't we have to pay it at some point in 2024 and didn't we budget for it?
we budgeted in 2024, but in 2024, we had to make a 2023 and a 2024 payment.
I got you.
So
Essentially,
we paid
skipped
the,
first payment, now we're paying double.
we paid the 370 and we paid another 370 and we only budgeted for one. Like I said, luckily we had carried over 200,000 because I said we budgeted it, we might as well pay the principal down as soon as we can. And so that helped. If we wouldn't have done that, we'd have been in serious trouble, but that's been the biggest issue, with the budget that we put forward. Everything else has been going pretty well. As you go through there, you'll see some ups and downs. Some budget items are a little over, some are under. That's pretty normal. I do have an issue I'll be looking at and I'll update that a little more next time, but it's good news, bad news. Our ambulance is doing a lot better. We've gotten a lot of new members. We're responding more. With that, we didn't budget enough salary for them. So, I'm gonna be looking at that budget. That looks like a department that's gonna end up going over their total budget. So I gotta look at the
Is
overall
that gonna
budget.
be offset by the contract?
Revenue. It'll be some revenue. The problem with the Lebanon contract is we pay a year in arrears. So they tell us in January, we put it in the budget and the payment's due by June. So we made the payment for 2024 already. They're probably running less and we'll have less of an expense next year, but it doesn't. fall
And what's
this
the
year's
per
budget.
call for Lebanon at the moment?
$365.
So hold on Lebanon, are you saying we're essentially paying for the year before?
Yeah, we're paying
Yeah.
2023.
Okay.
It actually is nice from a budget perspective, because in January, we put a number in and we have a pretty good idea of what it's gonna be. And then January, they give us the bill. We can make sure it's in the budget prior to the budget going through.
Got it. So essentially, the savings from Enfield volunteers responding is gonna show up in the next year's budget.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
I
If
didn't
there
know
is a
about
say, I mean, it might be,
Yeah.
I
it might
can
be
tell you on the
washed. It
fire
might be
side, and I
washed.
think the EMS side, call volume's actually increasing. So we'll be looking at those, but I know the fire side is, and I'm pretty sure the EMS side.
I didn't
is
mean
quite a bit.
savings, I mean like, last year was like, hey, almost all the calls went to Lebanon,
Yeah,
right? And so the split.
Yeah.
Is essentially showing up, the impact of the split shows up next year.
Yes,
on the Lebanon side. But on the Enfield side, it shows up this year.
yeah, what they do is track how many calls they go to.
Yep.
And then they bill us and we pay
Once
it.
a year.
Yeah.
Got it. Anything else on the 2024 budget?
No, I think that's it overall. If I look at the bottom line, we're tracking on budget, but I know those are some expenditures in there that are not gonna follow through. So I'm fairly comfortable right now, but we'll continue managing closely.
Can we talk about, because it's more closely related about the audit report before we talk about the project updates?
The audit report,
Yeah, and the audit update.
yeah, I can give you that.
Yes.
That's not good news. We had a finance problem. Partially from having a brand new bookkeeper, partially having horrendous problems that we'll talk about a little bit more with our software. But the auditors came in, they got their documents, those things. There were some things that were messed up in the books that we had to reconcile. It took us a little while to get that done, so we didn't get them the full audit records till this summer. So it looks like the draft audit will be coming to you guys, he said late fall, so I'm thinking November.
And this is 2023.
2023's audit, yes. And as I told you, I know you expected it closer, but you know.
Yep.
It was the same thing in Claremont. Ours was June to June or July to June. And we would get our audit in February, March from the year before. And Weathersfield was the same way, and it's pretty much how it works in government. We can try to get it a little sooner, but this one's gonna be delayed.
Whatever's normal in business, that's not
Yeah.
normal, right? That would be very unusual, but
Yeah.
you know, government is government.
I mean, so next year we expect it back like in the summer timeframe.
It's probably normally gonna be the draft budget around the August, September timeframe. If you guys
Okay.
remember last year,
Yeah.
that's when you got it. The auditor was here to talk
Yeah.
to you about it.
Yep.
The numbers really don't change from the draft audit. Very, very rarely is there many number changes. It's usually at that point working with the legal team and talking with them and having a legal letter written, having the management letter written, all those little things that come after the audit.
Are there concerns in the management letter, or do we not know yet?
We don't know, but I don't think so. None of our processes have changed, so I don't see any.
So the fact that we couldn't give them some numbers on a timely basis because of our software and whatever else didn't concern them. They're solid with.
They might mention something about that. We'll see what comes out of that, but it really doesn't matter. It's a problem to me and it should be a
Right.
problem to you guys. We've put some processes in place. We've got some training. We were really struggling to get training from our software for our bookkeeper. We've gotten some of that. I'm going to be talking to you guys about changing finance software, which isn't cheap, so we'll have that discussion. But it's like pulling teeth to get the budget or the finance software to do anything, and we're really having problems with it, so. We've done a lot of demos with a few different companies, not tons of companies, but a few different companies. I'm trying to stay away from the big boys, if you will, Tyler, some of them that they're really good programs, but they're really, really expensive. So we're trying to find a really good mid-grade product. So we'll be.
How long have we had this product?
When did Ryan get it?
2018.
It's not that long.
Yeah.
And was it expensive?
I don't know what the transfer cost, the overall year-to-year cost isn't horrible in the finance realm. It's not cheap, but it's not. Not
So essentially,
expensive.
we're,
A lot of people are having this problem.
so essentially what you're gonna recommend is that we take that loss, throw that money away and buy a new software that's more user-friendly, has better training.
Yeah, a lot more automated, a lot more transparent. The one we looked at today that I really liked that we'll be looking at has. You know, we can set up the budget committee with a dashboard to see revenues, expenses in real time. It updates hourly, so you can see what's going on and. There's a lot of good stuff, but I need to do a little bit more homework to make sure we're headed in the right direction if we do propose this to you.
And as far as you know, is 6 years about the life expectancy of a,
It should last longer than that. I don't know that it was the greatest
okay.
product in the first place,
Yeah.
but, you know, I don't also know what happened internally with the company, and they have switched to a cloud-based system, which is different than what we ordered, and it's not working quite right.
Will, as a new on this committee, will these problems, cost, other than the new, system, cost, bond or interest, increases, for us?
I can get you the details when we present it, what exactly it is, but there's an initial implementation cost, and then there's an annual service.
Of our current accounts and our current,
It doesn't touch our bank accounts,
okay.
so it has nothing to do with our bank accounts. It's just the bookkeeping software. So that's one thing you may see this year. Other than that, I think we're trying to toe the line. We're trying not to introduce anything new, and it's something we'll talk about. I do think it'll add efficiencies. There's also a really good, I might even have them pop in if we do it and show you some of the stuff, but there's really nice budgeting software that goes with it and things that'll make the process a lot more streamlined, make the process a lot less manual, i.e. a lot less possible in terms of cities. We do a lot of things manually right now. There's a lot of export this to Excel, update numbers, do things, import it back, and it's pretty antiquated.
Project updates? Or unless there are more questions on that topic,
I have a general question. You want me to save it for the end or introduce it now?
is it related to the audit?
It's related to the budgeting process. I was just wondering if we could go over what the town process is in terms of budgeting. Yeah, because Dan and I don't know that, Dave doesn't know that, but just.
We can
save
do
it
that
for-
at the end.
Let's save it at the end.
So the other things are pretty high level overviews. I think they're good for you to know. Project update. Maybe doesn't really fall into this realm, but there's some good news. So, like I told a few people before we started, Whitney Hall's going well. It's on track to finish October, November timeframe. With that, we've jumped most of the major hurdles. So, and we carried money for structural problems, rot, all those different types of things. There's a whole bunch of things we carried some money for. Again, if you followed the select board, we entered the agreement for a guaranteed maximum price minus change orders, if you know much about construction. But then we RFP'd out the elevator portion, which was $134,000 over and above that guaranteed maximum price. Talking with Red Loaf last week, it appears that jumping all those hurdles and stuff, it looks like we're gonna have enough money in the bond to go ahead and pay for that elevator. So what we had hoped happened, actually happened. We continue to try to manage prices down as best as we possibly can. So hopefully we're coming to the end of that project with enough money to cover the elevator that we pulled out of so we could sign the contract. And we're moving in the right direction.
So you think we're gonna move back in this year?
We'll see. I didn't budget moving expenses, so it may be January, so we can budget some moving expenses into this year's budget.
I thought we talked about it was probably gonna happen in December. Well, stars.
Right.
They were talking November-ish. I said, December, January was probably more realistic on a construction timeline. I've been very impressed how they've stacked subcontractors in there and got things done. So that's going well. That's something that we will be taking into account as we're continuing to build the budget for this year.
So I know there's a lot of discussion that will have to take place between now and the end of the year, but just the way it lands on me, it doesn't really seem to make sense we don't have money in the budget, so don't move till January. It seems like,
We'll have to see where it goes. I was telling some of them, I still don't think we'll be ready to transfer in
Okay.
November.
that's a
So
different.
then we're pushing late November, December.
Yeah,
It's not that much.
Yeah.
you know, we can't, we're a government entity. We can't just move in and say, we'll pay you in January. The auditors go, no, that doesn't work that way. You have to pay them out of this year's budget and we're not allowed to go over budget. And
Again,
we're not allowed to just pull fund balance or something. That has to go to the voters. It's a lot of rules.
first meeting.
So we'll figure
It
it
took me
out.
2 years before I caught
It's
up.
okay.
We'll figure it out. There's other things we may be able to do. I mean, there's gonna be some setup. We're gonna need to do some of those things before we're ready to move in and occupy, so.
Yeah.
We'll work through it and we'll move when we're ready.
Well, the moving process itself is pretty time consuming, isn't
It was a week-long process to move out. Just all day, every day, moving trucks, moving things. We had 96,000 pounds of stuff to move out of that building. Probably 90,000 to move back. We sold out some things. Yeah, it's quite the process. And then we're a little early in the public safety building one, but things are moving ahead pretty good there. We've already had a couple wins in our favor on budget, so we'll keep moving that way. One of the things that came out of that, we had I think a year and a half ago, the budget committee talked about RFPing for propane. We did that. We got a really good deal with Dead River. 2025 was the end of our contract. We have to put 5 1,000-gallon propane tanks in the propane or in the public safety building. That bill came in at $10,000 to put it in. With a little finagling, some emails back and forth, Dead River called me and said, hey, I got an idea for you. If you extend our contract, which is rack price plus, not a percentage, 43 cents is what they charge per gallon, rack price plus 43 cents. For 3 years, we'll put all the propane tanks in for free. So I signed that contract this week. So we extended our contract with them starting now for 3 years. So it was really a 2.5 year extension.
Price per gallon locked in or?
Rack plus 43 cents for 3 years. So this year it's 163 right now.
It's just not bad.
Right on average with what other big companies are doing for pre-buy. So it's a pretty good price. I felt comfortable saying, yeah, there's our 3-year contract.
So, sorry, what does rack do?
It's what they buy it for.
The market, the going market rate.
So it's not-
So the company buys it for 120. And then they sell it to us for 160.
Thank you.
And have you used Dead River for anything before?
Dead River's been our people for a
Oh,
long
okay.
time.
Oh, okay.
When we RFP'd out a couple years ago, they were the lowest price. Really want to keep the down contract.
Okay. And as far as the safety complex goes, like, where are we at, like, budget wise? Are we above, behind?
It's really early to say. I mean, we're so early in the project. There's so many things to go, but we're on budget. Again, we have a guaranteed maximum budget minus change orders. That's just a slightly below budget. So we're on track for that, but change orders can happen and do happen through a project. We've had one already that was unexpected that we needed to do. There was just, when they dug in another place on the site, they found more groundwater than they expected. We had to put in some subterranean drains. Not a huge cost, but it was a cost and we both carried contingency for that.
As far as that building is concerned, is that building the same size as was originally planned, or has it been reduced?
It's really close to the same size. It might have been reduced slightly. It's 15,000 something square feet. I did talk to MFAC and a few like the emergency operation or the meeting room, some of the offices and stuff were almost large sized on purpose. That way, if it needed to come down a little, it could be, but we really didn't sacrifice any usefulness out of it. We just tweaked some sizing in there a little bit. We did take one bay off the fire bay. And that's a little bit of a difference between fire chiefs. One thought we needed one for expansion and one thinks we need to downsize equipment. So
When is that project supposed to be done?
May, June of this upcoming year,
Okay,
both of them should be done in this.
so we should have a
Next
good
one,
idea
second.
where we are by town meeting.
Yeah, we'll be headed down. as of right now, police, fire and ambulance all say they're not gonna need like a moving company or something, that they plan on moving their stuff over themselves.
When they were doing Whitney Hall, I kind of envisioned we would see some open second floor outside walls due to rot and things like that. Did they just do that from the inside?
They
Take care
didn't
of it?
find any wrong.
Really? How did that happen?
The only, we didn't really find rot. We found one burnt wall in the
Yeah.
upstairs theater area in the back
Mhm.
that we had to do some
Mm.
structural changes to, but other than that, they opened the roof up and I was expecting we're gonna have some boards. They found one little place and it was actually on the new construction from the 1990s.
So it's so many holes in the wall, it ventilated itself enough not to rot.
It was all coming out the walls, not
Yeah.
staying inside, so.
All right.
Can I ask a question about Lakeside Park at this point, Ed, or would you rather wait until I wait till the end?
You can, does it have to do with?
So, I'm curious, where that project is. I keep hearing from people in town that it's over by 61,000, and I'm wondering how accurate that is.
No, we're back. We're back on budget. Originally, when I did it, I was thinking, oh, great, we're over budget. I worked with the contractors, DPW, a whole bunch of people to pull that back under. We have a little bit money left in the Mascoma Lakeside Park project.
And can I also say at this time, and I know it's kind of a touchy subject, but it's my own personal thoughts that forever and ever, this project has always been no taxpayer money. And the last I knew, the mowing and the plowing is not charged back to Lakeside. And it's a great spot. I love it myself. I think it's wonderful. People can enjoy it. But if we're gonna keep advertising and pursuing that that's a no taxpayer project, I think it really needs to be a no taxpayer project.
Well, I've said since I've been here, that's a fallacy. If someone actually believes that, the building of it is, the maintenance of that park is gonna cost the taxpayers money. It did before I got here and it will after.
I know, but I mean, I feel like nothing against the members of the committee, but I feel like it's always been promoted as it's not costing the taxpayers a dime, and it does
It
cost
does.
the taxpayers a dime.
I
Any
don't
town
think
property.
anyone ever thought that the maintenance was cost.
Right here, I looked it up this afternoon.
Maintenance was included in that?
Yeah.
I'm on that committee and I never thought that maintenance would be.
This is an old document that I looked up.
No, and that's should have been written in the beginning.
Cause that's on.
I know the sales
Impossible.
club has continued to contribute to maintenance costs there. I believe Eva has stopped. And I'm not sure if, the rail trail
Yeah.
is contributing to the porta potties.
They're contributing to that, but the cost that the town puts into that, you guys, the donations are nowhere near touching what it would cost.
I'm only looking at this from the perspective of trying to find creative ways to not be spending monies that we don't have to be spending. That's my whole logic of that. I mean, like I said, it's a great spot. I love it myself. It's great that people can enjoy it, but if there's some way and somehow we can not have to pay DPW to go down there and do all that, I think it would be great.
I think it'd be great too. I think it's very unrealistic. I mean, you guys can try to raise the money for that and hire a contractor and do it, but
Do we charge for groups to use it?
we charge for people to rent the pavilion. We don't charge to
That's what
use
I'm
it.
saying.
We're not allowed to charge to use it. If
Right.
we do, right now, we only rent it to Enfield residents. Once the grant's completed, I haven't done the closeout paperwork. I'm working with them.
Is that significant?
Extension.
Is that likely to be significant revenue?
Probably not, but there's a possibility. I mean, but there's also some things to work out in there. I do have one I'm dealing with now. She rented the pavilion and had her wedding and left, and then while they were leaving, someone came in and had a wedding there and they didn't rent it. But they didn't reserve it either, so it could have been taken. And
It's called creativity.
so you're really reserving it. It's an open public space. But if you want to make sure that it's done, we rent the pavilion at Hughes Park, we rent the community building, we rent the pavilion at Lakeside Park. It's a small cost right now. When we do sign on the paperwork for the federal grant, we're not allowed to say Enfield residents only anymore. It's federal money. The one thing we can do is give a reasonable discount to Enfield residents. But it is a possible revenue source for, what I look for in raising money for maintenance is not mowing the lawn and the basic stuff. I mean, that has to happen so much. It would cost more to go outside than stay inside. But, you know, we're going to have to maintain that pavilion. We're going to have to rebate the parking lot someday. So if we can keep some revenue stream coming in for those types of maintenance things. But when the town accepts a park like that, there's gonna be some maintenance costs that go along with it.
Any more questions?
Okay. Any other project updates?
No, those are, I wanted to do the two main ones just to let you know where we're at, and
Health insurance.
health insurance update. Coming out of last year, we
Mhm.
told the budget committee we would look into some health insurance options. We have been doing that. We've looked, of course, with our health insurance company, Health Trust. Brad got us in touch with a broker, John Foley, who has some really great products. And then I'm waiting on something back from Harvard Pilgrim and the New Hampshire Trust, I think is what they call it. I'm not too hopeful on the New Hampshire Trust one, so we're looking at moving forward. I'm still talking with John and a health trust. It looks like we'll be able to move forward with some significant savings. But I wanna iron out the final details of how we're gonna make that work. To do that, and we'll come back to you, but what we are looking at is a high deductible plan with an HRA or PFA, as John Foley calls it, which the town and depending on who we go with, the town or the town and employees can pay into it to help offset that deductible. And then I'm gonna work to put together a plan where we can maybe start a little higher on that deductible that we're paying and pull back a little bit over the next couple of years. And I want to do it in a way, talking with John, I actually learned a lot. But I want to do it in a way where I think we can front load some deductible where 80-ish% of our employees will have almost better insurance than they have now at a tremendous cost savings to the employee and town. And then the ones that use a lot of insurance will have to pay some out of pocket, but they're also the ones that are increasing rates and those types of things. So
Ed, can you remind us, as far as the town goes, like if there is a person that works for the town who has a family, do we pay for the family, the whole family plan? Do we just pay for the person? How does that,
we pay 80% of a plan
for everyone?
for most everyone. We have a few people, but it's very few that are grandfathered in at the lower percentage that we had a few years ago. So that is one thing I talked about. If we make this switch and it's saving people money, we may roll everybody over to 80/20. So we'll be looking at those numbers. I got some numbers from a couple different companies. We're waiting on the last one and we'll really crunch those before we put something in the budget and present it. But it does seem like it's gonna be a significant cost savings.
So it's not an RFP that goes out, it's more people come in and show you different options and you weigh them out.
Yeah, I mean, we could have RFP'd, but you know, just looking at a few, there's some options here. One of the things I'd really like to do, and that's why I'm leaning towards the company that we're with, High Deductible Plan, or the person that Brad sent over, is they're both Anthem insurance products, which is what we use now, which means the site of service providers are all the same. People don't have to change doctors.
Yep.
It's a lot easier segue.
We do it every year. We shop every single year.
So it's definitely worth looking at.
Mhm.
It'll be a big change for the employees because they're going from a copay system to a high deductible system, which is a much different thing. But after really looking at it, I think we can find significant savings for both the employee and employer and maybe even provide a better insurance product. So
I think it's common in
It's very common
in
now.
industry
Yeah.
to have the high
And
deductible.
the key is communication to the employees. You've
Yeah.
really gotta go through it and make sure that they understand. That in the end it'll be better, but you know, they're gonna pay the high deductible, then they get reimbursed and.
Well, John's product, they have the debit card up front.
Yeah.
So they don't have to get reimbursed, which I really liked with that, because we have some employees that are struggling to make it month to month. And if they had to go pay a $500,000 payment and then wait a week even to get reimbursed, they may not be able to do that.
The other key is you have to fund your health savings account. Right? I don't know if you guys have these plans.
I'll show you the product. We're not using an HSA, so it's
No.
not a health saving.
Is it an HRA?
It'll be an HRA or a
Which is really
PFA,
similar.
which is very similar
Very
to an
similar.
HRA. And
But
the
they,
reason I want to go to that, and I'll tell you right now, that in HSA, I did that in Weathersfield when we did it, and it's nice. It's really good for the employees. If they don't spend their money, they get to keep it, but it also makes your employees extremely mobile. If they can leave and they get to keep that money and take off. If you're in an HRA type plan, it rolls back to the town. You can roll that forward to cover medical cost increases. You can even do things with it to benefit your employees if you want to, but it stays here. And if your employees decide to leave and go to another community, that money stays here.
so and you're saying employees can contribute to the HRA?
No,
No, it's the town.
Got it.
the PFA
Because the high
program,
deductible is so high, if the town contributes to the HRA and pays the deductibles out of that,
Got it.
far less expensive.
Yes, yes, yes.
It's actually, everybody wins.
yeah, well, and it's a little different. The PFA one that Don Foley that you introduced to us does, it's actually the same 80-20 split, both people pay into it.
Yep.
So that one made a lot of sense to me, that we keep that 80-20 payment going in to help fund the deductible. So in a way, they're helping fund their deductible up front before they use it. The town's paying part of that. And I really think we can come away with a product that's gonna benefit most of our employees.
Good.
Like I said, at a significant savings.
Yep. And I looked on the Skype, so when is health insurance gonna come up, you think, in November or later?
When we get it done, we'll bring it to you. I'd like to have it in pretty soon, but rates don't really come out till October. So it's gonna be hard to have a solid fast number till probably the late October, November timeframe, but we should be able to plug some numbers in pretty soon, so you have an idea of what that's gonna look like.
So we're starting the budgeting process obviously today. You guys are probably already at it. When does the final budget have to be completed and approved by this group? What's the date?
End of January.
Into January, the public hearings are beginning of February. So we're 3 days earlier than last year, so we're right in the time frame of last year going through. It's really a good time. I know before I got here, there were some midsummer meetings to look at the budget, but been in government a long time now, and truly with the fund balances and the fund accounting and stuff. Before 6 months, the budget really doesn't show you much. You can see if personnel's trending right, those types of things, but there's so many projects that hit in the summer. And then, you know, we also have a lot of things, you'll see dues and a lot of contracts we do are due in the late fall, so big items come at weird times, which I'm sure is the same in a lot of different companies, but we don't have a regular income outcome. So around this time frame is a good time to really start getting an idea of what's the budget looking like? Are we on track? Are revenues coming in? You know, the state doesn't pay us till November. So we're looking at $500,000, some big payments, $400,000 for meals and rooms, block grants. So there's big chunks of revenue that are not here until a month before the budget.
Casella is always a big chunk for us, not a revenue, unfortunately. How long is our contract? Where are we at with our contract?
We just signed it last year.
It's a 3-year.
I think it's a 3-year, it might be a 5. I'll double check that, and it's a 2.5% increase, so We have a few years of not having that big increase we had last year.
Okay.
We'll start looking at that.
2.5 every year for the next 3 years.
Yeah, the one that we have to watch on an annual basis is the tipping fees to Lebanon. They change those and that changes the overall cost of dumping the trash.
Give me the Reader's Digest. What's a tipping fee?
It's what they charge us to dump our trash there, and Casella dumps at Lebanon.
Yeah. So if they change, it impacts our contract, because that contract is for the pickup, not for the dump.
Yeah,
Correct. Gotcha. Thank you.
we pay a fee for them to come pick it up, and then we pay for the actual cost of dumping the trash. Casella does all that, but the tipping fees that Lebanon charges Casella get passed on.
It's not a contract with Lebanon. It's just every year they tell us what the fee is.
Yeah.
And then
A
the only
lot
game-
of people in the area use them. They're the community.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Can you tell us, where we're at on Shed Street and the Methodist Hill property?
Funny thing.
Yeah. Shed Street was cleaned up. It will be, we cleaned that, we did it, we put it out to RFP. We've had one investor come back and talk to us. After the initial proposal, the select board asked them to do some more homework, some redesign, come back with them. Same concept, different, I guess, look to what they were proposing. They're in the middle of that. We have told them that while that's going on, before we make the final decision, we would accept other proposals if they come in, but we're not actively seeking other proposals. I think that'd be a little unfair. So they're close. They're gonna be coming back to the select board to talk some more within the next few weeks, probably. Methodist Hill property was redeemed by the owner, so they paid us what they needed to pay in back taxes. They actually,
And legal fees, right?
and legal fees, we can get you that number, but it was like 60,000. So pretty good chunk of change back,
A lot of effort.
a lot of effort. Just so you guys know, they made an outside deal with someone, so it was a
For the Krogers.
double transfer, so
What do you mean?
they paid us, we gave them, we released the lien, they sold the property the same day. To someone else paid it for it, that's really what happened. So,
Nice family though.
And I think it's going into current use.
probably,
That's the downside.
so those two properties are gone. I'm gonna get through these projects, I've been looking at the other properties we own, there's not much out there that's sellable that we own, but there's a few things that we can possibly look at. Sure.
What about the old police station once they move over to the new building?
We have not talked about that on the select board yet. We've been starting to have discussions about having discussions. And so we're gonna be talking Depot Street, Union Street, and the police buildings.
Good.
Initial chatter, and that's probably all that it is that I've heard, was possibly keeping the police building and getting rid of the other two.
One.
Have that discussion for what, but that's the initial chatter I've heard from a few. It's definitely not a consensus.
Hmm.
So, and there was no formal discussion on that.
Right.
It is part of that complex, which makes it tough, because I think part of the thought process designing Whitney Hall was the little parking lot behind the police building would also be used for Whitney Hall parking. So it's
Convinced the telephone company to buy it.
Well, it just seems like,
they don't need it. They don't use what they have.
yes,
It's little buildings.
I can't think of a reason of maybe smarter people than I, but I can't think of a reason why we would wanna keep it. I mean, but you're gonna have to maintain it and it's,
There's a few options out there. We'll have those discussions. I've heard some things that I don't wanna throw them out right now. So
Apartment rental.
It doesn't make much sense for us to be throwing this idea around to your,
Right,
Yeah.
no,
right, the select board hasn't even had a whisper about it.
Yeah.
can we talk a little bit about process? The whole budget process and how you approach process, how it starts, what do you do, how do you involve your department heads, whatever?
Yeah, we usually have a little bit of a talk about it. Lisa prepares the budget reports with budget actuals from the last couple of years. Again, it's a very manual process with our finance place, so we export from our finance into Excel. We put it out. In the past years, they all got their own spreadsheets. They emailed them back. We redata entered them into stuff. It's a little bit better this year. We've moved on to the 20th century.
At least you're in Excel.
We're using SharePoint, and so they're going in and putting it in, and we're not re-entering and re-entering. We will be importing that soon, I hope, back into the finance software. And then.
I do the same thing, so I feel your pain.
But, we do that. I have executive team meetings monthly, so it's Chief Holland, Jim Taylor, Rob Taylor, myself, and Elisa. Sometimes we invite the police fire chief, but not very often. And we sit down and just talk about things. So usually about the July, August timeframe, I'll give them a little bit of direction of where we're at, what we're looking at. This year was, don't introduce new projects, those types of things. We're gonna try to fund this year's budget, coming to you guys, maintaining service levels unless you think something needs to go down. We're not increasing service levels. And what do you need to get through the year? And that's really what we did. I asked them to have them back to me by about mid-August. We were coming back from vacation about that time, and so they worked on them. We got most all of them. We're still tracking a couple of the small ones down, but we get those back and then I start reviewing them, going through them, asking questions.
Do they do 100% of their budget, including salaries?
No, we'll do salaries, telephone, internet, things that we can just track what's the actual cost going through. So they don't do the salaries. They mostly do the operational parts of it, what they need for sand, what they need for paving, those types of things.
Gotcha.
What road do they plan on paving? What's it gonna cost to do it?
Yep.
So they do those, I review them, I talk to them. I look at 3 to 5 year actuals and then go talk to them when I think something needs to go down from where it has been. And I talk about why they think it needs to be where it is, if they don't agree that it can go down, and we manipulate those down to where they think they need to be. Hopefully soon we'll have those together with revenues. One of the things I want to do this year is present revenues first, so we can quickly have what the proposed tax rate is and not introduce that in January like we did last year. I'd like to go through the process, kind of having an idea of what we're looking at. And then from there, they kind of back out if we need to make changes, or if you guys ask for money to be cut down, then I go back to them to talk to. That is where I would like to be with the executive team. If you guys are like, this is just way too much, we need to come down, we'll talk service levels a little bit, because something's gonna have to be cut if we're gonna do it. And then I would love to be able to go back with my team and say, this is what they want to eliminate. Let's see if we can cut 30 or 50,000 out of the budget and do that. If you guys get into, let's cut 500 here, 1,000 there, it messes a lot of things up. You may cut 500 from a line item that cuts 6,000 from a whole project, because that 500 was a key. So
But it all adds up too, right?
it does.
Yeah, so
So-
it's like, it's a balance,
Yeah.
how you approach it.
I would rather see big picture that, I think we did a little bit of this last year. Last year was tough with the buildings, but if we're come in at a 6% increase and you go, you know what, we've got to be to 4 or 5.
What's the number you have in your head for this year?
I don't have a number for an increase.
Percentage, no?
I'd like to be as close to 0 as possible, but I think
I like the
cost
sound
of
of that.
living, those types of things.
Yeah.
It's gonna go up some, but I'm gonna try to keep it as low as possible.
What's your target for salary increase this year?
I've got to think about that a little bit more. I just looked up cost of living. We had decided we were gonna do July to July cost of living. That was 3.5% for the Boston metric this year. So,
Why do you use Boston?
because that's the closest that here.
They don't have one for Manchester?
I don't think so. They have a New England and they have a Boston metric, and
I would use the New England.
I think New England's higher, not.
Is it?
Use the Boston, but Boston's what most people around here use.
Yeah, it seems to be a pretty. common.
It's this area, if you will. It's not Boston itself, but it's kind of the whole Boston metroplex.
It's the, labor statistics, stats that you're using?
Yeah, Bureau of
Yeah,
Labor
yeah,
Statistics,
yeah.
CPI.
Yeah.
And I like to pick 1 month. I've been involved in places where you play the game and we're gonna use the year and you take September because it's a little higher, a little lower, and then next year it's July. Stick with one and you get a true data set every year. I was hoping for more of the 2.8. That's where I thought we were headed, but last month it was 3.8. This month.
So,
the year's
And if you're
3.5.
going up by 3.5% on salaries, that means your overall operations have to come down by 3.5% to come out at zero-ish. Right? I don't know the percentage of salary versus operations. but-
Yeah, and we have to look at entire salary. You know, we have lots of people that get paid by the town and they're not all full-time people and not everybody gets all of that. And so there's some of that I need to look at. I want to look at the second half of the phase for the compensation study, but I need to do some real deep diving there because I think we're getting pretty close to where we need to be.
Mhm.
We've done a lot better in the last year after we put a little money the last couple of years in recruiting people. And it's been extremely helpful.
Yeah, good.
And did you implement the new step program or whatever you were
Not,
going?
not
to
yet.
use?
We decided last year not to implement that because we were trying to just get to where the compensation study said we needed to be. So I need to look at that a little closer. And then I'll come to you guys with a proposal, but
And there was a series of increases for, several employees, some of them
Most-
significant.
most of them were 2-year. There was a handful or less people that were a 4-year plan to get them where they needed to be.
So you spread it over multiple years.
The higher ones, we went to 4 years because we can't just do big raises in 2 years.
Is it possible that when the department heads come and talk to us about their budget, is it possible, I seem to recollect last year, although I came through the process halfway through the process, but that the budget is actually complete, that in other words, that all of the line items are filled out completely so that we can look at,
We usually present that to you
Okay.
prior to them coming in.
okay,
The one thing we didn't do that I didn't like and wanted to make the change was the revenue piece of it. So you're thinking big term, what are we looking at? Let's increase those types of things,
Yeah.
because
Yep.
it's really easy to come in and talk and, oh yeah, that sounds good, that sounds
Right.
good. And then the
Exactly.
incomer comes out and you go,
Exactly.
wait a minute.
It's definitely good.
exactly.
You know, let's back up. And I think we'll have a more productive discussion if it's, okay, we need to come down a little. Let's talk through these line items and see what's out there. What projects are we actually thinking of doing? What do we think we can maybe not do this year? And
Ed, is there any type of bids or group purchasing for things like office supplies, or does each department sort of do it on their own?
we have, I don't want to call them contracts, but we work through Staples and stuff with accounts and each one kind of does their own. We're not big enough to get, you know, any major discount of any kind for buying bulk stuff. We just don't use enough. Normal basic offices probably use way more office supplies than we use townwide.
How many total employees do we have now? Full time?
I'd have to look that up. It's about 33, 30. 32, 33 regular, I'll say, not full-time, but regular working on a day-to-day basis.
And I have a couple of other kind of oddball questions, but I sort of made a running list all summer. I'm wondering if there's any, not knowing or going back and looking at them, the trust funds that we have, I'm wondering if there's any trust funds hanging out there that can be utilized for anything in the budget anywhere. And I know that those have to be voted on at town meeting. That's not something you can just decide in the spur of the moment. Oh yeah, I'm gonna use, you know,
We
5,000.
can look at some of that. We have been using the last couple of years, some of the cemetery maintenance trust funds and things for some of the cemetery projects, and we'll continue to look at items like that. We've done a better job starting last year. There really wasn't much, but looking at you know, some of the reserve funds and saying, are we doing something where we may be able to pull this, especially one that we're not using anymore? We did a good job last year at cleaning a lot of those up,
Yeah,
just
this
get rid
seemed
of
like
those.
there's a
And,
lot.
I mean, there's a lot of trust
You voted
funds
on
for certain
several.
things.
Right. But I'm saying there's just seems like there's a big list. My other qualm is, wondering if we can't, drastically reduce the size of the annual town report. We no longer mail copies to save money and we tell community members the information's online. So every time, every year I open it up and see, it makes my blood boil, I have to tell you. House representatives, state representatives, governor, it's like, really? We really don't need all of that nonsense. Anybody and their brothers can pretty much look that up online, and I just feel like it's really an unnecessary piece of information as far as I'm concerned. I don't know about other people, but it's more stuff to be printed.
Should put that on the select board. We can go through it with the
I've
select.
always
board
had
and
the
see.
same feel.
Hey,
We
I'm
can go
not
through with the
totally
select
crazy.
board. There are some things that are required by law
That's
to
the
be in
tricky
there.
issue, yeah.
Oh,
And then there's also a lot of things
and
that
it's like-
some people think are extremely important and some people
Yeah.
think are just fluff that are filling pages, so.
I mean, those things get thrown in the trash most of the time. I save mine. I've got many down in the filing cabinet. My husband always says I have a file on him
Yeah.
too down there, but, um,
I'm glad you guys don't mail them. That happened before me, but I've bought it before and you mail them out and you go in the post office and there's a recycling bin full of them in the post office. They
Yep.
didn't make them out and you're
Right.
spending $9 a piece to mail them.
right,
So
yeah. No, I'm all for. not
anything we
mailing.
can do to cut printing costs and to make that a little smaller, I'm in favor of.
Yep.
I used to.
We have done some of that. It seems like it continues to get bigger, but you know, we used to put the entire audit in there. We've really cut that back to just the pages that are what I feel are crucial. And then there's a link that you can see the entire audit online if you want to go read every.
I know many of us don't like to be compared to Canaan, but take a look at Canaan's annual report compared to ours. It's like probably more than half smaller than ours is, and
I would think we should go to what's required and
Yep.
Yeah.
stay with that, but.
Yep.
We can talk about that with the select board because that's their decision.
The question probably more for you, Dimitri, than Ed. So when I've gone through budget planning processes in business, you never start just with that year. You always do a strategic plan first and you look at what's coming down the pike in the next 3 to 5 years. And I know the strategic plan for each department is online and I've looked at many of them. But do we start there? Do we start looking at what's coming down the pike in the next 3 to 5 years? What does our CIP look like in the next 3 to 5 years? What are
You'll
the
be, you'll
big?
be getting a CIP presentation
Yeah,
and that's a 6-year plan.
okay,
Hopefully, we're getting it honed down. Again, when I started, it seemed the whole plan almost seemed to
Okay.
change annually.
yeah,
I think we're getting a lot of that weeded out. We're getting more regular basis, especially vehicles, those types of things. We know what's coming. We know what's gonna be funded from, most of those things are now funded by the CIP fund,
Okay,
not the general fund budget, but it's still good to know what's out there, what's coming down.
I've always found if you don't do that, you tend to go 1 year, next year, next year, next year. But if you have more of a longer term vision, you can kind of smooth that out.
Yeah, and I've really been working with, DPW. They'll show you, as you dig through the budget, you'll realize that they're a large majority of this.
Yeah.
But, you know, the long-term paving plan, those types of things, you'll start to
Exactly.
see those.
The
and
bridges.
They have
Bridges, yeah,
which ones are coming.
All in CIP.
One of the things you're gonna see in the CIP, we just talked about it yesterday, was there's a few bridges on there. We're actually gonna pull those off the CIP plan and we're gonna have a study done to tell us what needs to be done when, and have an engineer or somebody that really knows what they're talking about, put a plan together. And instead of us just saying, we think it needs to be done here,
Based on what happened with the states. Is there any coordination you can do with the states so that we don't have the same problem as Oak Hill?
the hard part with that, and that's the same thing with our state funding, is we do our budget and then the legislature meets and decides what they're gonna do for a budget, so. That funding that came down was a legislative directive for that year only to give money to the towns. So they don't plan ahead, you know,
And
it's hard when the legislative bodies change, you know,
So
Yeah, and the legislature is very unpredictable.
Yeah.
Really can't plan based upon that.
So the CIP plan is like 6 years and looks at the big dollar items.
Yeah.
The general fund focuses really on the operating costs year to year. And I think if people, those who've been on the committee for a long time will notice that it doesn't actually change a whole lot year to year. And yes, we can try nickel and diming it to make it lower, but at the end of the day, making it lower is about deciding what services we want to have, which ones we don't have. Is that a fair statement? I think, yeah. So
it's really convoluted too, because ultimately it's the select board's decision of service level, budget committee's level on how to fund that service. So we really need to be sort of collaborative and together. Part of the reason we put together that emergency services committee to look at the next 5, 6 years of where are we headed? What are we doing? Are we gonna need to be looking at budgeting anything?
Right.
So that's some of that. It's not wrapped up in a neat little strategic plan like a business would have. We did do a strategic plan this year for some visioning thing, but a big part of that, and we can go through that a little if you want. A big part of that was we just brought on 2 big projects. The next 5 years is mostly let's do some planning. Let's start looking. Let's do things that don't cost a lot of money, but start positioning us to do some bigger things in the future. Not bigger projects. I don't want people running thinking that, but you know, sidewalk plans and how do we look at our transportation systems and can we make it more user friendly for alternative transportation, those types of things. But
there
it's
might,
a lot of planning and a lot less big projects.
but that should be CIP. Right?
The strategic plans, not strategic plans, select board.
Right, but I'm saying, looking at what are the
Bigger
projects,
projects.
what projects are we gonna do in the next 5 to 6 years?
The planning part's not them, the actual,
Budgeting.
what are the projects? What is the budget?
But that's.
Any larger capital assets over $10,000 going to CIP.
Okay, right.
And sorry for some naive questions, but is CIP a group of individuals just like us?
Yes,
That overlap in this room, actually.
yes, except they're not voted on, they're appointed. And in fact, the group is much smaller because people don't volunteer for it. And so after having gone through this meeting several times and being on CIP once, I was like, I should be on CIP more than this meeting almost, because that's where the big dollar decisions get made. Here, we make small tweaks and they have a big impact because it's a bigger pot of money.
Is Dan Kiley the chair?
Yes, but he is stopping.
But what?
He is,
This is his last.
this is his last year.
It says that a lot.
He seemed
That's what he
pretty,
told.
he seemed pretty convinced that it was gonna be his last, right?
Yeah,
Did he really? He was serious, huh?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I believe he's serious.
Ed, do we have any planned, retirements during this next budget season?
We have one planned retirement,
Well,
Julie, and then one planned exodus of a employee, our recreation directors, I believe, in May. So we're gonna have 2 employee turnovers to do. We will be budgeting like an extra month of salary on each of them so we can overlap and train.
The rumor on the street is that Chief Holland is retiring too.
I don't think he is this year. So that is a rumor.
So we see the new building open, run, or why?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, last I talked to him, he had no plan, so.
He's seeing it on the horizon, but I don't think he's made up his mind yet on what he's going to do.
He had a date, we've talked about it, it wasn't this next year, and he's also said that he may push that out of it, so we'll see what he decides. My department heads, for the most part, all know and communicate well, and they'll give us plenty of time to plan.
Julie's retirement.
Julie's
That's a
retirement, she ends
biggie.
December.
That's gonna be a huge void.
So we do wanna hire someone in the November timeframe, so we have some time to train and overlap.
There's a lot of federal money that's flowing around. So we hear. Is any of it being pushed down our way?
We are getting some federal money. We're really careful on grants, and the federal money is getting harder and harder and harder to deal with and expensive. We looked at getting a federal grant this year for the public safety building, but they put huge restrictions on it that would have really increased the overall cost of the public safety building.
What about the water system?
Well, the last time we got a bond for that, we got about 50% forgiveness from the federal government. That was federal money. So the 1.9 million times 2 bonds we got, we're only gonna end up paying 1.9 million for both. So yes, we've gotten that. You know, they're paying for the engineering on the byways project, the Shaker Bridge project that's going on, that the state's paying for is federal money coming to Enfield. So yes, there's a lot of federal money flowing through. It's not all coming straight to us, but it's coming through the state to us.
Shaker Bridge project.
The Shaker Boulevard Bridge is being replaced.
Oh, Shaker Boulevard.
Does it have to be, Ed?
It does now. Put a lot of money into
Because it's
it.
federal money, right? Why
It's
not?
federal money and
Paying for it anyway.
it's a great percentage. We're paying a very small percentage of this 1 point something million bridge. So
Do we get to keep
What's
the
it?
bridge?
Yeah.
I don't know how the whole deal ended up, but
What's the time frame on that?
It's supposed to what?
I think next year.
Yeah. They've done all the groundwork for.
It's sort of hopefully sort of a portable bridge.
It's a portable bridge.
Yeah, the one that's in there now.
Oh, it's good to have a bridge in the backyard.
We already
Right, you
have
never know
one.
when you can
How
load
many
it
do you
out.
want?
Yes.
We have one now. I mean,
So,
You wanna buy one, Dan?
and what do you need from this committee? We're gonna be coming at you, we're gonna be nitpicking, and what do you want from us?
like I said, I think I want good discussion in here. I wanna look. I mean, yeah, we're gonna be looking at bottom number, but let's look at it from a high level. You know, nitpicking 500 here, 100 there is gonna waste all of our time and make very little impact. Let's talk that big number. Let's see where we wanna be, what we wanna do, what we need to cut. And if we need to cut, so we can, we'll do that. And if not, we'll talk to you about what the consequences of doing that will be. And
It's really like, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna give an example. The first year I was on, we voted on every single line item, every single one, and we made $100 here, $100 there. And I look back, and we cut the budget by $15,000 and we spent 9 hours doing it. Okay, complete waste of time. I would rather say, hey, we think the budget is $20,000 high.
Figure it out.
You go figure it out, come back to us with a new number.
and it won't take us.
And not sit there
Not
voting
that we
line
have
by
it.
line.
We'll just tell you,
That's the way.
As long as you agree to whatever we tell you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we've done that, we've
well-
done that.
We'll come back with something like, okay, here's the $20,000. We're gonna do 10 culverts instead of 20 culverts this year.
And so I'd rather do that because they understand the budget better. Rather than us saying, oh, we're gonna cut $100 from stamps here and $100 from printing there. And it literally took,
Hours. It was just.
it was more than 9 hours. It was like 6 meetings, 2 to 3 hours per meeting, up and down vote on every single line
We
item.
used to have a liaison too from the budget committee to each department.
And so I'd rather have the high level discussions. I do think we need to get to a tax rate sooner, even if it's with estimated numbers on the revenue side. So that we can say, hey, we want to get to this number, like we need to cut.
I think the revenues we can get pretty close, cause there's a small difference, but there's not a lot of difference between now and November when we're trying to put them together. We may get the big check from Meals and Rooms, but if we put a number in now that we think is a good projection and in November it's different, we can come to you and say,
Right.
I think we need to lower this, which is gonna raise the tax rate in the end, and
And so, and then out of that go, you know, and we shave X dollars, because we've had it before where you said, hey, we made a mistake, the number's really this, the taxes are gonna go up, and we went, sorry, you go find the money somewhere else, and you, they went and negotiate. I think that's a better use of our time.
I would agree absolutely. The nitpicking never gets us anywhere significant.
and then the other thing I would say, and we'll try to talk you through that if we do it, but if we are cutting something, what's the cost of that in the future? You know, the little analogies, your roof on your house, if it's not doing well, you can throw a tarp up there or something, but it may, a $15,000 job may be a $50,000 or $100,000 job in a few years because we didn't do the maintenance or we didn't do something.
Over in ditches, a great example. Great.
Library is.
Yeah.
Paving's a huge one, building maintenance, those types of things.
So,
But it trickles down as far as salaries. If you don't keep up with COLA and you don't keep up with the market, sooner or later, you've got to make that up and it hurts when you make it.
And those are two good examples. Building maintenance is something that's so easy to cut, right?
Sure.
It takes a while for people to notice.
And that's why I go back to having that strategic plan and knowing, okay,
Yeah.
where are we at with all of the infrastructure, around town?
and I
I know.
think we need to spend, I'm not saying we necessarily this group, but I wish there were more people on CIP.
How many are there?
3, 4, there's been 2.
There's 5 right now, and
Is there 5?
it is allowed to be larger if people wanted to volunteer.
And so, and on CIP too, you know, nothing against Dan, he's been, you know, when I first joined, there were like 2 or 3 people on it. It's much better now. We gotta look more than just next year. And kind of peek at year 2. We gotta look further ahead. And I think we're heading in that direction,
That was the intention.
right? That's the
Yeah.
intention.
Yeah.
We're heading in that direction, but we gotta, I think this year we gotta push it to get a solid 5-year, 6-year plan. Not one where we go like, yeah, we're pretty comfortable about this year and next year, and then we'll deal with year 3 later. And so I think that's important because if you don't manage CIP well, it can not work. And if at the end of the day, the budget committee is taking responsibility for CIP too. If CIP does not work and we go like, hey, CIP ran out of money, we need X amount of dollars, the people of town are not gonna be happy.
I will
And I
say,
wouldn't
though,
blame
we're
you.
not headed there. I know last year people were like, whoa, this doesn't look right, but a large percentage of those were those big bridge projects that I think were just put in a little bit more of, hey, you need to be aware of this is out there and it's a cost, but it really doesn't belong in the actual 6-year plan. So we're working on we put a column and we're working on getting the department heads to use it better, that this is not on the plan and it's not here, but no, this is out there.
I attended, as a newbie there and trying to figure out what, they did. And there was a lot of discussion that was difficult to understand because, it wasn't for, available for public view. But there was a lot of references, and you can probably, echo that, and Jim, that, that's on the 5 or 6 year plan. So I think they're working on that. I don't know how far it's along that is, and it was impossible to tell from the
Yeah,
reference.
no, there's a 6-year plan there. I'm gonna say the problem I've had a little bit is it seems like from the department head view, some things got put on there and then the next year it's like, no, let's move it over here. And so we just need to solidify that plan a little bit more. So and then we had the same discussion to the CIP committee that, if we decide to kick something down because of financial things, are we compressing the plan in the future?
In the future.
Instead of buying a grader 1 year and 3 years later we buy a loader, now we're buying a grader and next year we're buying a loader and the next year we're buying a backhoe, and it stacks everything together. So we try not to do that, and we're trying to build the longer plan. Vehicles are actually the easy one. We should be able to sit down and say, here's the average lifespan of these vehicles and trade them off. And do a little bit of homework on trade-in values, those things, and sometimes it actually makes sense to get rid of one a little bit earlier, because you get a really good trade-in. We get government pricing, they resell them at contractor pricing, and so there's ways to play that game a little bit and make sure that we have decent equipment and we're not spiking our maintenance bills and those types of things as well, so.
And speaking of building maintenance, do we still have some sort of person that kind of runs around and keeps track of?
Yeah, we have a facilities person. That position, as it went through the budget committee, got morphed from a true facility maintenance person to a facility maintenance person that does janitorial as well. But he's doing a really great job. So the guy we have now, he's doing a really good job. We are making some changes. I've been working with Jim and Jeremy on kind of merging facilities and grounds a little bit more. So it's gonna be one department and they're gonna have their own responsibilities, but they'll be working together a little bit more to do a better job taking care of all town assets, so.
Yeah, I hope we do a better job moving forward with building maintenance, because we've not had a history of.
Yeah, we're playing catch up right now. You know, the floor in the community building just got done. We still have the handicap ramp on the community building is scheduled to be done this year. They're gonna be getting that work done soon. We're talking on the CIP about, paving the parking lot at Hughes Park that's starting to fall apart. If we wait too much longer, it's gonna get really bad. And so those are, some big ticket items we have to talk about. And
Anything else?
As the newbie on the committee and coming from general public, and many of the meetings that I've attended in the past year, it's sometimes difficult for members in the general public to be able to be well informed as the meeting goes on about what the discussion is about, last night being one example. And I had a couple of suggestions that might help. One is to screen share the spreadsheets and be able to highlight those areas that we're discussing, so that those people in the audience, although there may be a few, or on listener, again, maybe, or not on Teams, again, maybe a few, can see what's going on. I don't know that any of us would attend many public meetings unless we had a special interest. If there was very little information available to us, and our comments were limited to the end of the meeting, when all the decisions have been made. So something that I think, I don't know if we need a motion now or discuss and consider this in the future, but I think that's important. Also, as somebody that's not that familiar with big spreadsheets, I did small business budgeting for myself. It would be very helpful to have timely packets, 72 to 48 hours ahead of time, so that I can familiarize myself with those before these meetings. Getting them the night before with other activities that I have going is not conducive. So I appreciate that consideration. Thanks.
So can we project things during the meetings?
We can screen share some things, and the CIP is a little challenging. It's very
Yeah.
small print, a very big spreadsheet.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 11 by 17 tiny print, and there's multiple pages, so it's a little more complicated, but when it comes to the budget worksheets, that's not that difficult, because it's, 8.5 by 11, so you'll be able to read it.
Because I believe that would be helpful. Even if.
The key, let's see, the key for me as the person who's running that is that the committee go through things in an orderly manner. won't go through this budget and then jump over 7 pages.
Yeah.
But kind of go in a nice, neat, orderly manner, then it's easy to screen share. But if you're bumping all over the place, it's really hard.
We would say that if you come in with things you wanna talk about, use the actual titles on here and the numbers are actually even a little easier. We can find them quicker, we can get through and do that. So yeah, just having good reference when you come in.
Page
Instead of,
numbers
hey, I
are-
looked
are
at this and how come
And they,
this page number line?
do we have any need to mark things draft? Some things think it looks,
Yes.
I think that marking and draft.
Well, once a draft is discussed here, it's public.
I didn't say.
But
it
it's still a
was
draft.
It's still a
With
draft.
the draft.
It's still a draft, but you can label it as a draft, but it's still public and available to them.
That's fine. I just don't want someone getting something that's being discussed and running around town or getting loose on listening.
That's a fair concern.
They might anyway, but it's also, everything's a draft until it goes to the
Town
town
meeting.
board. I mean, we can try to mark stuff. Probably get it done. Sometimes it's a little more difficult. It might be my tech savviness of going from Excel to PDFs and stuff.
Maybe
and
on your
marking and
agenda.
stuff, but
You have the disclaimer that the things that are gonna be speech here are drafts. Every meeting, say it, so that,
yeah.
you know, and you.
But they're out there, we're
I mean,
discussing.
you have those shadow draft that you can put.
Yeah.
That's- But,
The watermarks are easy.
yeah.
Any other questions?
Just say, yeah, I'm sorry, Chief, go ahead, please.
My only other quick comment is when the proposed budget is printed, to be able to have page numbers on each page would be really helpful.
Yeah. Something similar.
At the bottom.
Oh, the thick packet?
Are working.
Is that possible?
I
Well,
don't know
I
if
mean-
it does it automatically. If I have to do it by hand and then scan it, I suppose I could. But I
Should be
think,
a footer.
I think it shows up on.
You know,
there.
Word documents do that easy. I had a little more hard time, and like I said, it might just be me not knowing Adobe.
Excel does it too. You can do it with Excel. If
Yeah,
you're using Excel.
I think the budget should print straight out of your software, right?
Ah,
Ah.
So that's where I'm not, I don't know, I can't recall what it does. I think it says page numbers.
it has to, right? Got it.
No,
That's what your report does.
I would love, yes, I think it does, but.
There's a lot of things in this software we go, this has to be that. No, it doesn't.
Demetri, I just wanted to echo David's second comment that it is early as possible to get the documents. It helps me, I know, and I also think it makes a much more productive meeting. If we're all kind of just going through things, it's tough. So being as prepared as possible, that would help. Thank you.
Yeah, these first few are the hard ones.
I know.
I get it. I get it.
All right, any public comments? Lindsay?
Jump at once.
Voting machines coming.
Nothing from me.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for listening.
Oh, it's been
Wait.
fun.
Any motion to
I
adjourn?
make a motion to, end this meeting. Oh,
Second.
All in favor?
Uh,
Aye. Meeting adjourned.
Um,